Hey, what's up? My name is Lucas Paganini, and in this video, we will code this switch toggle animation using just native technology. So I don't plan on using any libraries, just native HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. As I code this, I will explain to you my thought process and why I'm doing things. And if you want to learn even more about web animations, I have a course that will take you in a more structured step-by-step process. So I'm not gonna hold any information here, okay? Like I'm not gonna not say anything valuable here just so that you can buy my course. It's not about that. I'm gonna give you all the informations about this transition. But if you want the more step-by-step, like taking you from the beginning until advanced, then you should definitely check out lucaspaganini.com/web animations so that you can see my course on web animations there. Okay? All right, let's get started. So, as I was saying, I found this animation here on Dribbble. So I wasn't the one that created this. So it was created by Dimos Papakonstantino. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I'm sorry, Dimos. But yeah, I'll leave the link to this Dribbble shot in the video description. So if you want to go to Dribbble, leave a like, show some love to Dimos, that will probably be very well appreciated. All right, so let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in CodePen. So I have this CodePen here from scratch. I'm going to call this let's call this web animations practice switch toggle. All right, so the first thing that I want to do here is I want to actually find out the dimensions of this white box and this circle here. I'm not gonna find the correct dimensions because I don't have access to the original Figma file, or I don't know which software he used for that. Maybe Adobe XD, I don't really know. But I'm going to try to port this Dribbble shot into Figma to at least measure some proportion of pixels here so that I can do this in a more faithful way to the original design. So I am going to copy this image here, here on Figma. This is just an empty Figma file, nothing here. I'm gonna paste this, okay? So I have it in red. Now I'm gonna get it in green. So copy. And, bad timing. I have to wait for it to be green. Okay, now. This is not helping me. Whatever, I'm gonna just print my screen here. Okay. All right, so first thing is I want to identify what are those colors. So for me to do that, I will do the following. So let me create a frame here, and I'm gonna say that this frame is of this shade of red. Okay, so now I can see that this is the hexadecimal representation of this shade of red. I'm gonna create another frame, grab the green. All right, okay, so now let me already put those variables here. So I'm gonna use the root selector to define my variables. So the red is going to be this one, and the green. So I'm creating two variables, one named red, another named green. Nice. Okay, so first things first, let me style the body tag. Let me style the body tag here. One thing that I'm gonna do is here on CodePen, you can go to those settings to add reset CSS, and I really like this because I like using reset CSS. I think it saves me some time. You also increase the zoom here, just in case you're in a smartphone and having some trouble to read. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna say that the body should by default have a shade of red. Okay, that works. And then I'm gonna put bottom with a class of toggle, and for now I'm just gonna say that it has a background white, and I'm gonna put like some random width and height here, like width 200 pixels and height 50 pixels. Doesn't really matter the values here, just putting whatever. So by default, all buttons come with this border. This is like a default browser style, so I'm just gonna put border 0 so that I can remove this. All right, and our bottom class is not aligned in the middle, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use display flex in the body, and display flex, and then I'm gonna use justify content center and align items center to centralize it. Okay, as you can see, it is horizontally centered but not vertically centered, and the reason for that is that the body is not, this is the height of the body currently. So for example, here I'm selecting the body. As you can see, this is the size of the body. So what we need to do is we need to say that the minimum height of the body is 100 viewport height. So now the body is going to extend to fill the entire height available in the viewport. So let me copy this style here, put it up here in the CSS, and now we have body with our shade of red and div centered in the middle. So I just answered the biggest question of the internet, which is how to center a div. That's already very valuable, so leave a like, please. I'm already answering you how to center a div. All right, back to it. So now let's go back to Figma to try to get those dimensions. Okay, so here, what I want to do is, let me just put the rectangle on top of this so that I can try to have an idea of those dimensions. I'm gonna use lower opacity here so that I can see where I'm going with this rectangle. And I want it to fit perfectly on the edges of the toggle image that I printed from Dribble. Okay, now I'm gonna do the same for the circle here. Let me use a different color, try green, and also I'm gonna put some opacity. Okay, right. Okay, now if I make this rounded, then yeah, okay, it fits nicely here. Okay, this is what I wanted. All right, so what this is telling me is that the rounded peel, the white rounded peel in the background, is 132 pixels and 70 pixels of height, and the circle is 62 pixels of width and 62 pixels of height. Okay, so let's use that. Let's use those dimensions. So actually what I can see is that the circle has 4 pixels of padding. So actually, sorry, the peel has 4 pixels of padding, and then the circle is inside of it. So that's interesting. So let me try to replicate this on CodePen. So instead of just random values here, I'm gonna actually use 132 and 70 pixels of height. I'm gonna put the border on top, and I'm gonna say that the border radius is like 999 pixels. Okay, I'm using that because if I used like 100%, then it would be this oval shaped, and I don't want that. I want it to just have rounded edges. Anyways, okay, so inside of it, I'm gonna here in the HTML, actually, let me just collapse the JavaScript because we're not using that. So here inside the bottom element, I want to add like toggle circle. I'm going to add not a span, let's put the div. And now this toggle circle, this is gonna be the actual circle inside the toggle. So you can see that my class names are not very creative. So this one, I'm gonna say that the background is red, the shade of red that we defined before. The width is 62 pixels and the height is also 62 pixels. This is an accessibility problem, okay? So if this was for real, like a production grade switch toggle, then I would try to use more accessible units. So I would probably use RAM here just because I want the size of the circle to increase in case the user increased the font size. Make sense? So I would probably use RAM here instead of pixels, but that's not the point of this video. I don't want to make it super complicated. So I'm just gonna focus on getting as fast as possible to the actual animation that we are going to do, okay? So we already have that, nice. Now what I'm going to do is, let me add padding of 4 pixels here. Okay, already looks good. And yeah, I think that's all for now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to create a different style for when the toggle is active. So when the toggle is active, I'm going to add a class named active here to the bottom. So this is going to be really easy. Let's just hop into the JavaScript real quick just to do that. So what I want to do in the JavaScript is I want to const toggle element. I want to get the element with the class toggle. Again, if this was a production application, I wouldn't just directly be getting the element. I would be creating a component and etc. But for our purposes, there's no need to complicate things. So toggle element, got this. So now I'm gonna add event listener to when this element gets a click, and then when a click happens, I'm going to get the class list and toggle the class active. Okay, save this. Okay, so now when we click on this toggle, it should add a class here. Let's see if that is working. Yes. Okay, so as you can see here, it is adding and removing the class active to the toggle button. Nice. Now let's add some styles to it. So when the toggle has the class active, then I want the toggle circle that is inside of it to have a background of green. Okay, cool. Besides that, I also want to move the ball to the right. So how we can do that is, let me try something here. What if this was like left 50 pixels? No, that doesn't work because there's nothing to get a relative position from. So what we can do is we can say that the toggle has a position relative, and what that's going to do is, here in the toggle circle, when I say that the position is absolute, then it's going to be absolute based on the nearest parent that has a relative position, and the parent is the toggle class. So if I say like left 4 pixels, top 4 pixels, then it's not going to be 4 pixels from the top left corner of the page. It's going to be 4 pixels from the top left corner of the parent element, which is the toggle class. So the proof of this is if I remove the position relative from the parent, now the ball is missing. But what actually happened is that the ball is, let me show it to you, make it blue. The ball got all the way there. So now if I make the parent position relative, now when I define left and top, it is in relationship to the parent element, which is the toggle. Okay, so I put the red background back, and now we can see that this thing here is working, but 50 pixels is not putting that in the right position. So let's inspect this element and see if we can get the right amount. So I don't want to use like absolute values. I want to try to find a more specific approach that is going to work independent of the width of the parent element. So what I can do is I can say that I want the left to go 100%. So this is going to take it 100% of the parent element. And then what I can do is I can say calculate 100% of the parent element minus 62 pixels, which is the size of our circle. And we can even say 62 plus 8, which would be 70. Or, sorry, 62 plus 4, because that's 4 of padding from the right. So I can just say 66. So we can do that. But I also don't like this, because what if we changed the width of our circle? Like, for example, let's say that, see, now it's 72 and it doesn't work anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 100%, but then I'm going to use transform, translate x, and say that I want it to be minus 100%. And then here, actually, I'm going to say that left is going to be 100% minus 4 pixels. And we also have this translate x. So the huge thing that makes this work is when we say percentage here, when we are in the context of left, the percentage is in relation to the parent element, which is the white pill in the background. So it's when we say 100% is the total width of the parent element. But when we use percentage inside transform translate, then the percentage is in relation to the self-styled element. So in this case, we're applying the styles to the green circle. So it's going to be 100% of the width of the circle. So 100% here means 100% of the width of the parent element. But minus 100% here means minus 100% of the width of the actual element that we are styling. So we are saying go left 100% of your parent. So this is going to take you here. Then we are saying translate minus 100% of yourself. So that takes you here. But we want a little bit of padding. So we are also adding 4 pixels here. Okay? So this is why this magic works. Let me copy that, put it up here. Okay, so now I save. Boom. Okay, working. I also don't like that the mouse is not a pointer. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't seem clickable. So what I'm going to do is here in the toggle class, I'm going to say that the cursor should be pointer. Okay, now it looks clickable. Cool, cool. We also want to change the background color, right? Like if we go to dribble, the background color also changes, like the background color of the body also changes. So let's do that. Let's say here in the body that the background is red, but there's a new CSS selector that is going to help us out a lot here. It's going to make our code much cleaner than other ways of doing this. So we can say that if the body has an element with the class toggle, and this element also has a class active, then apply the following styles to the body. The following styles are background should be green. Boom. Cool. Okay. Nice. But there's no transition here. It's just a snap change. So let's take care of the transition now. First off, before we go to the transition, there's a very, very easy accessibility thing. I was holding myself back from doing that because I didn't want it to go outside the scope of this video to not make things more complex. But there's a set of accessibility rules defined in ARIA. If you go to like ARIA patterns, there's a pattern for switch. And if you follow those standards, then users that have any kinds of disabilities, they're accessing your website through a screen reader or things like that, they will have a better experience in your web page. So it's so easy to do that I'm just going to go ahead and implement this. I didn't want it to do that because it would introduce more complexity to the video. Like you didn't click on the video to learn about accessibility, you clicked to learn about animations and transitions. But I'm going to do it just because I think is valuable. So I think that every time that I can teach people about accessibility, I should, because it really makes the world a better place. Anyways, so we need to use ARIA row and say, is ARIA row or is it just row? Let me check it here. Switch has a row, switch. Okay, sorry, I was interrupted in the middle of the recording. But anyways, let's get back to the challenge here. So I'm just trying to see if ARIA row is like written, the attribute is written like just row, or if it's ARIA, hyphen row. So I went to the W3org example to see how they did this switch here. Oh, I can see here, like it's just row switch. It's not ARIA row. Okay. So let's do that. So to make the switch accessible, we can follow the accessibility standards defined on ARIA. And they say that we need to define 3 attributes. Tab index. So tab index is just so that it's tabbable. So like I can tab to the element here. Can you see it? I tabbed to it. So I just pressed tab on the keyboard and it went to it. It was already tabbable because it was a button, but it doesn't hurt to add the tab index 0. And what they want us to do too is to use ARIA checked to define if the switch is active or not. So if ARIA checked is equal to false, then it's inactive. And if it is true, then it should be active. So what we're going to do is, instead of using the active tag to indicate if the toggle is active or not, we're going to use this ARIA checked attribute here. So I'm just going to say that if toggle has ARIA checked equals to true, then it is active, and I have to do the same thing here for the body, and I also have to change the JavaScript. So instead of adding the class active, what I want to do is, first I need to see if it is checked so that I can change the state. So if it is checked, then I want to uncheck, and if it is not checked, then I want to check. So first I have to get the current value, so toggle element get attribute, and the attribute name is ARIA checked, and then I'm going to set the attribute, and the attribute name is ARIA. The attribute name is ARIA checked, and I'm gonna set it to the opposite value of is checked. So if it, let's say that you grab the current value and it is equal to false. So actually this should be, I need to see if the value of this attribute is equal to true. Okay, so let's say that it is equal to true. So is checked is gonna be true. And then you invert it, is gonna, I'm inverting it here. Can you see it? Like inverting. If I invert and it's true, it becomes false. If it was false and I invert, it becomes true. So by doing that, I am toggling the attribute. So as you can see, it works the same way that it was working before, but we just made it more accessible. So instead of using a class called active to see if it's active or not, we're using ARIA checked. So as you can see here, ARIA checked to see if it is active or not. Cool. Okay. So where were we before? The transition, of course. So first, in the toggle circle, I want to add a transition and say, let's say 500 milliseconds. Let's say 300. Feels like 300. And let's say that we want to change all properties and use the ease timing function. And now, boom, okay, that's already working. Let's do the same for the body. So the body is gonna, but the body, let's just narrow it down to just the background. There's no reason to transition everything in the body. Okay, cool, that's already working. But let's check dribble again. Okay, so here, can you see like the animation? It actually like it stretches and then it pulls. So we're not done yet. We need to do that. So let's do that. How can we do that? What we can do is, besides transitioning just the left and the transform translate property, we can also transition the width. So what we can do is, we have to increase the width to 100%, but then get it back to 62 pixels. And that's a problem, because if we're doing just a regular transition, we won't be able to do this 62 pixels until 100% and then back to 62. What we will actually need is an animation here. So a transition will not do, which is a shame, because I always like to resolve things with simple transitions when possible, especially because they take care of this middle step so well. Like, can you see it? If you click and the ball is still in the middle, like it doesn't finish the animation to go back to the other. It just takes it from there and resumes the transition from that point, which is really nice. And we lose that if we do animations instead of transitions, but whatever. We could also like add JavaScript to make this work, but it would be even more complex. So let's do animations. But before, even one more thing, like I noticed that the color only changes after a while. So let's do that before we even get more complex with animations. So let's do the following. Here in the toggle circle, first I'm going to transition left, and then I'm going to transition transform. And then after all that, I'm gonna add a third transition, which is to the background. So the background is actually going to transition in 200 milliseconds, not 300. And I wanted to wait. It's also gonna use the ease timing function, but I wanted to have a delay of 300 milliseconds. So let's see if that works. Oh, that's nice. Okay. So what's happening here? The left property and the transform property transition immediately with no delay, and they take 300 milliseconds to transition. The background property transitions in 200 milliseconds, but it takes 300 milliseconds of delay. So when we trigger the transition, it waits 300 milliseconds to transition the background. So this is why it's moving and then later changing the background. But the body is not doing that. So let's also do that with the body. So here in the body, let's see that the transition is background 200, but it needs 300 milliseconds of pause. So, oh, that is sweet. I like that. I like that very much. Okay, now let's get to the more complex part where we animate this stretching and pulling. So as I said before, we will have to use an animation here. Trying to do that with a CSS transition would just make things even more complicated. So let's go ahead and define some keyframes. So I'm going to define two keyframes. I'm going to define a keyframe for slide on. So it's the animation that slides from left to right and from the color red to the color green. And we're going to define another keyframe, which is slide off. So this is going to be you're already in the right and you want to transition to the left, and you are green and you want to go to red. So let's do that. We're going to start with 0%, and at 0% we will be, let me copy some properties here. So at 0% we will have a background of red. That's true. The width is going to be 62 pixels. That's true. Border radius is not going to change. Position of not going to change. Top is not going to change. Left is going to change. So, and transform translate is also going to change. So transform translate X initially is going to be 0%. Later, we're going to move that to minus 100% as we were doing. Okay, so from that point, we want to now transition all the way to it. So like when the animation is done, when it's at 100%, the scenario that we want to be in is the background should be green. The width should also be 62, but left should be 100% minus 4 pixels. And transform should be minus 100%. Transform translate. So that's the scenario. Let's just add that, and let's do the same thing for slide off. And then we're going to add the other steps that we need to add in the middle. So slide off is going to start with the opposite. So 0% here, 100%. So let's just invert things here for slide off. So slide off actually starts green, starts on the right, and it should end red and on the left. So now what we're going to do is, instead of just adding those properties when ARIA is checked through, what we're going to do is also set up an animation. Let me set the animation at the beginning first. So let me remove this transition. We won't need that anymore because we use animations instead of transitions. So animation is going to be slide off because it is off by default, so it's sliding off. And this animation should take 500 milliseconds, and it should use ease, and it should only run once. I don't want it to run infinitely. Okay, so that's already working. But then when we activate the switch, then the animation needs to change to slide on. So the animation name should change from slide off to slide on. So okay, that's working. Cool. But still boring. So it's not doing what we need. So let's actually make it do what we needed to do now. So here on slide on, we need to add more steps to the animation. So it starts with this, but at 60%, let's add a breakpoint here. Why am I using 60%? Because we're using 500 milliseconds, right? So what we want is 300 milliseconds to do the movement, and then 200 more to do the background color change. So I'm using 60% here because if we're using 500 milliseconds, 60% is 300 milliseconds. So from 0% up until 60%, what we want to do is the movement of it stretching from the left all the way to occupy the whole width. So this is what we want to do from 0 to 60. So which properties are going to change? So the background is still going to be red, but the width is going to change from 62 pixels to 100%. Left is going to stay this way, and transform translate is going to stay this way. Okay, that's kind of working. Like it's actually stretching a little bit more. Like let me put this in slow motion so that you can see it. Let me use like 5 seconds instead of that's easier. Okay, so let me show you what's going on here. So see how it goes over the limit? Like it's going over the padding, like here. Or take a look. Here is going over. So what we need to do is the width needs to be calc 100% minus 8 pixels. It's 8 pixels because we already have 4 pixels from the left due to padding, more 4 pixels from the right, so 4 and 4, 8. So now this should stop at the right point. Yes. Okay, this is stopping at the right point. Nice. Now, what we need to do, first let me get back to 500 milliseconds instead of 5 seconds, because we're not in Matrix, so let's not do everything in slow motion. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to change the width, and we're already changing that from 60% to 100%. The width is already changing from 100% minus 8 pixels to 62 pixels. The background is already changing. Left is also changing. But the thing is, sorry, CodePen hates me. The left property and the transform translate, they shouldn't change smoothly at this point. When we get to 60%, it should just snap into the right and then reduce the width. So those two properties here, left and transform, I need them to change immediately when we get to 60%. I don't want them from 60% to 100% to smoothly change from 4 pixels up until calc 100 minus 4 pixels and from 0% to minus 100%. I want them to instantly change to that when we reach 60%. So what we can do is we can add another breaking point here. But instead of being 60%, we're going to say 60% 0.001. So basically, there will be a transition from 60% to 60.001%. But it's going to happen so fast that it's basically going to be immediate. So let's copy that. But left and transform, I don't want them to change smoothly. So I'm going to already put those values in them. Okay, so now what happens? Now that is awesome. Look at that. Boom. So cool. I could do this all day. So now let's do the same thing for slide off. So I will copy those two keyframes here, paste them here, but obviously we'll need to change them because slide off starts from green. And the width is correct, but left should, I think left is wrong. Left should stay here at calc. It should stay at the right, so we need those values for left and transform. And then here, x 60.001%. Now is the time for the left to become 4 pixels and for transform translate to be 0%. Let's see if that works. Okay, this is so cool. This is so cool. Ah! Okay. Okay. Let me see how fast I can go. Okay. Focus. All right, so this is already working. One thing that we could do here to improve this even further is I'm gonna reload the page and you're gonna notice a bug here. So reload. Notice that? I'm gonna do it again. So reload the page. It runs the animation in the beginning. And why is it doing that? It's doing that because in the beginning, toggle circle will run the slide off animation. And we don't want that. We only want to run the animation when it actually, when we actually activate it. So when it's untouched, when the input is there, is pristine, nobody messed with it, we don't want to run the animations. We only want to start using our animations after our users interacted with the switch toggle. So what we can do is we can say that the animation will run 0 times, but then we can add a class. We can say when toggle has the class touched, then the animation iteration count is gonna be 1 in the toggle circle. So the animations are only going to run if we have the touched class in our toggle button. So as you can see, it's not working anymore because we need to add this touched class to our button. But we only want to add this when our users interact with it. So let's go back to JavaScript and let's say that as soon as anyone clicks on it, let's add this class. So when any click happens on this element, then we are going to add the class touched to the class list of the element. Now it's still working just like before, but if we reload, nice, we don't have that bug anymore. So the animation doesn't run in the beginning just like it was doing before. Now it only runs after we actually touch on the element and play with it. This is so cool. I'm so happy with how this turned out. So cool. All right. That was it. There are definitely things that could improve in this code. I really don't like that I'm using this magical number of 4 pixels of padding. So I could probably improve that by adding another container here and then putting the padding into the container and the toggle circle inside. Anyways, that could be improved. But focus here was to show you how I would do this transition. And I think this video serves well this purpose. We even talked about accessibility and how to make accessible switch toggles. So I think this is enough for now. I don't want to add more complexity to this video. Links to the code pen and to the dribble shot will be in the description. Again, if you want to learn in a more step-by-step approach how I like the actual mental models, I'm sure that you did some kind of transition or animation before, but honestly, it's really hard to find developers that have a strong mental model around web animations, which is why I've created this course. There's a lot of content about web animations, but I feel like most developers that I interacted with, at least, they were still having trouble really understanding the right mental model for web animations. So this is why I created this course. It takes you from a conceptual approach, from a basic standpoint, so teaches you CSS transitions, then animations with JavaScript. So it takes you all the way so that you can do what I just did here. And even one more thing that we could do here to make this even better is we could use wheel change to notify the browser that the property left, transform, and the background are going to change so that our browsers can make performance optimizations and be ready to change those 3 properties of our element. So this is just a nice touch, nice performance touch at the end. Okay, thank you for sticking with me until the end of this video. If you enjoyed this, if you found this valuable, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about web development. I know that this is annoying, like asking for likes and etc., but it helps so much. You have no idea. You just leaving a like, leaving a comment, it tells YouTube that more people should see this video. So it really, really helps. It's a small gesture, but helps a lot. So thank you for all of you that are liking this video, making comments, subscribing to the channel. You are very much appreciated. Thank you. And I will see you in the next one.